He had the power to imprison them, to execute them, to end every one of their lives with a single word to Pharaoh. And they were standing right in front of him, begging for food. These men had thrown him into a pit, sold him for silver, watched him disappear into the desert. Now they were bowing at his feet, and they had absolutely no idea who he was. So why did Egypt's second most powerful man step out of the room and break down in tears? The book of Genesis, from chapter 37 onward, tells one of the most psychologically complex stories in all of Scripture, and it begins with a coat. Jacob had 12 sons, but one of them was his favorite, Joseph, the son of his old age. To show it, Jacob gave him a special robe, ornate, expensive, visible from a distance. That gift quietly tore the family apart. His brothers saw the coat and saw something else. Proof that their father loved Joseph more than them. The text doesn't soften it. They hated him. They could not speak a kind word to him. Then Joseph began having dreams. In one, his brother's bundles of grain bowed down to his. In another, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. He told his brothers. This made things worse. One day, Jacob sent Joseph out to check on his brothers in the fields near Dothan. When they saw him coming in the distance, they made a decision. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. "Let's kill him." The eldest brother, Reuben, talked them back from murder. So instead, they threw Joseph into an empty cistern. Then they sat down to eat. While they were eating, a trade caravan passed heading toward Egypt, and Judah said, "What do we gain if we kill him? Let's sell him. 20 pieces of silver." That was the price of Joseph's life to his own brothers. They took his coat, dipped it in goat's blood, and brought it to Jacob. Their father collapsed in grief, and Joseph arrived in Egypt as a slave, purchased by Potiphar, a senior official in Pharaoh's palace. He worked hard. He rose quickly. He earned trust. Then Potiphar's wife lied about him. She accused him of assault. She used his coat as evidence. He was thrown in prison, betrayed a second time by strangers this time. And he sat there, forgotten. But the story was not finished. To understand how a Canaanite slave could rise to govern the most powerful nation on earth, we need to understand the world Joseph was living in. His story most likely takes place in the second millennium before the Common Era. And Egypt at that time was not a closed empire. The eastern Nile Delta was a region where Semitic and Canaanite peoples regularly migrated, settled, and worked in Egyptian administration. Archaeologists excavating a site in northern Egypt called Tel Ed Daba, believed to be the ancient city of Avaris, have found striking evidence of exactly this. Semitic-style housing, large grain storage pits, burial customs completely different from native Egyptian tradition. Historians note that a group of Canaanite people known as the Hyksos, meaning roughly rulers of foreign lands, rose to govern this same region during this very period. They were outsiders who became insiders. Egyptian records from the Middle Kingdom also document foreign-born officials managing royal resources. So the idea of a foreign slave rising to national authority was not fantasy. It had happened. The political climate made it possible. The 7-year famine Joseph would eventually manage is also not historically isolated. Archaeological and textual records from this part of the ancient world confirm that severe multi-year droughts occurred during this era. The world was real, the conditions were real, and Joseph, after years in prison, was about to interpret a dream for Pharaoh himself and change everything. Joseph is now second only to Pharaoh. He controls Egypt's food supply during the famine. And one day, 10 men from Canaan arrive to buy grain. He recognizes them the moment they walk in. They are his brothers. They do not recognize him. And here is what has puzzled scholars for centuries. Joseph says nothing. He does not reveal who he is. Instead, he accuses them of being spies. He imprisons them for 3 days. He releases them, but keeps one brother, Simeon, as a hostage. He tells them to bring their youngest brother Benjamin back to prove their story. he has their silver secretly placed back in their bags. This goes on for months. More tests, more pressure, and throughout all of it, he keeps stepping away to cry in private. Some scholars read this as deliberate, moral testing. Joseph needed to know if his brothers had changed. Would they protect Benjamin the way they failed to protect him? The tests were designed to reveal who they had become. Others believe the delay reveals something far more vulnerable. This was not cold calculation. This was a man who was not yet ready, someone who wanted to reconnect but could not yet trust that it was safe. A man managing grief he had carried alone for 20 years. A third interpretation held in traditional Jewish and Christian theology sees it differently again. Joseph already knew the larger story. His early dreams pointed to this moment. His suffering was not a problem to be explained. It was a path being walked in faith. The text remarkably supports all three readings at the same time. Here is what most readings miss. When Joseph first accused his brothers of being spies, they pulled away and spoke to each other in Hebrew, assuming the Egyptian official could not understand. And they said, "We are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he begged us, and we would not listen." The guilt had been living inside them for over a decade. Psychologists call this a moral injury, a wound that comes not from what was done to you, but from what you did to someone else. His brothers had been carrying that weight silently, and Joseph had been carrying his. He was 17 when they sold him. By the time they stood before him, he was close to 40. 20 years of slavery, false accusation, and prison. 20 years of not seeing his father. 20 years of silence from the people who were supposed to love him most. When he finally cannot hold it together, when the testing ends and the moment arrives, the text says he wept so loudly that Pharaoh's entire household heard it. This is not the sound of control. This is release. He pulls his brothers close and says 3 words, "I am Joseph." His brothers cannot speak. They are frozen. Because the man they sold is now the man who holds their lives in his hands. But what he says next is what separates this story from almost everything else in ancient literature. "Do not be afraid," he tells them. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Modern psychology has a term for this kind of shift: post-traumatic growth. It is not pretending the pain wasn't real. It is not forgetting what happened. It is the ability to build a new meaning around suffering, to carry the wound without letting it become the whole story. Joseph did not erase 20 years of betrayal. He reframed them, and in doing so, he broke a cycle that had been repeating in his family for generations. Joseph never received an apology before he chose to forgive. He did not wait for one. He wept honestly, he tested carefully, and when the moment came, he chose to rebuild, not from a place of weakness, but from somewhere much harder to reach. Whether you read that as divine providence working through human suffering, as one of the ancient world's most powerful examples of psychological healing, or as both, it may be the most quietly radical act in all of Genesis. The questions this story leaves open are not ones that faith should fear. What does it take to hold 20 years of betrayal and still say, "You are still my brother"? What kind of strength weeps in private and forgives in public? The text does not give us easy answers, but it gives us one man, sold, forgotten and broken more than once, who found a way through. If stories like this move you, stories that take the Bible seriously as history, as psychology, and as something that still speaks today, then this channel was made for you. If today's investigation made you think differently, leave a like. It helps more than you know. And subscribe to Éden Unsolved, because every week we go deeper into the mysteries, the people, and the hidden human truths inside Scripture. The investigation continues.